All right, glad to see everyone here. It was good, and it was also good to see everyone at Easter. Wanted to, anyway, as I mentioned last time, or 2 weeks ago, what we want to talk about today is the four gospel versions of on the resurrection, because they are very different. And they tend to emphasize different things. And one of the questions that we need to explore is why they're, obviously what makes them different and why they are different. What were the gospel writers trying to emphasize? And what do the stories say about, frankly, about the truth of the resurrection? And the society of the times, which is something that, as you know, is of great interest to me, but also is important if you're trying to understand the whole background of Christianity. So, one of the first things that you have to kind of to understand when we're talking about is, and I have we sort of step back for 1 second and go to the crucifixion, because in order to understand the resurrection, you have to understand the tomb. And here is a picture of the tomb. Pass that around. What I would like you to note there is where the stone is. It's that thing that looks like a wheel. Mm-hmm. And so when the stone was rolled there, and there were two ways of doing this. You either had a wheel-like thing that went there, or you had a big boulder, right? And so that is based on what some. I forgot to bring the Bibles from the other. When in the Gospels it says that this was a new tomb, and so it might not have been quite so elaborate as done in that picture. But what it would, it could possibly be a big boulder rather than that wheel.
Now the garden tomb now has a big stone that they have to track, they can roll it away if possible. But that was designed probably much later.
Based on the archaeological, the stuff that they found,
right,
that looks like that. So that was so when you're imagining it, I want you to think about what the tomb might have looked like. There was also, as you see, there was like a passageway, which we Greek archaeologists refer to as a dramos, and that dates back to the Mycenaean tombs of 1200 and BC and before, but was a traditional way of entering the tomb. One of the things also is that if you look at this, you'll see that the ceiling is very low. And that was, and so when the workmen were building it, they would have to stoop over. Hence, as we will discover, when the disciples come to run in to go into the tomb, they have to bend over, which is a nice touch. and adds, at least points out that somebody who had, whoever wrote the gospel had some familiarity with tombs. So,
Or mining.
or mining, yes, which Joseph of Arimathea may have had in both. Yes. So, yeah.
I have a question about the tomb.
Yes.
So, was the door meant to be, open, if they, I should say, was tomb meant to have multiple people? Or
Yes,
just one?
they were definitely meant to have multiple people.
Yeah.
First they put the body in there,
Right.
and then, after a while, when the flesh had rotted away, they would gather up the bones and then put them in boxes. And then they went into little alcoves.
Oh, okay.
What are those
Yeah.
boxes called, my friend?
Ossuaries. So,
So then that, basically, the tomb is meant to be accessed
it was a family,
multiple times.
it was a family tomb, yes,
Right.
that's right. And that was the, that was kind of the point. He had built it, it was for his family, and then, or had it built, and it was for his family, and then, well, let's use it for Jesus. Now, there's if you want to think about it, Joseph being a devout follower of Jesus, and one who would listen to him, may have thought that he didn't have to worry about the fact that he was putting Jesus in his family tomb, because he might not be staying there long. So,
It's usually about a year. And in New Orleans, they have these big marble type
ground.
things, above ground.
the mausoleums.
Yeah, and the story is that after a year and they need to use it again, they have a little push rake type of thing, and they push the bones off to the back and it falls down, then you're with your relatives.
Really? Wow.
Anyway.
Okay.
At least that's the story.
No, well, you run out of space. You know?
No, these things are big. I mean,
No, but I meant if you had to build a mausoleum every time someone died, you'd run out of space.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
oh, well, they have quite a few. Every family has their own.
Right,
yeah.
but,
And that's why.
Yeah.
So, just to kind of give that setting here, so we all know when they have it in our mind, we know what the tomb looks like and what they would have seen, what they would have encountered. So I want to start really going through Mark's, which makes sense because that's probably the earliest. And also, if tradition is correct, it's the recollections of Peter, which I want you to keep in the back of your mind as you go through the story. So, the first thing in there, which causes not a problem necessarily, but is it been of some interest to scholars, is the very first phrase. And the first phrase talks about the passage of the Sabbath. So it was I don't want to get too technical into Greek grammar here, but that particular the particular phrase is something called a genitive absolute. If anyone who took Latin remembers ablative absolutes, it's a Greek version of it, where it is a temporal phrase that sets apart from the subject, the main subject. And here,
chapter 16.
sorry, yes, we are in chapter 16, yes. And the subject here it talks about the passage of the Sabbath. And the way it is put together as in the past, the aorist, the past tense, after the Sabbath had passed. Then, and that is that being the phrase to introduce what's to happen next. So now you know exactly when it was to occur. Now, some of the Gospels clarify this as we'll go into it. And they say, oh yeah, not only is after the Sabbath is passed, but when the sun had risen and this sort of thing. Since the Sabbath would have ended at sunset on Saturday, and theoretically they could have gone at any time after that, but that would have meant they would have been going to the tomb in the dark, and there would have been no reason to do so. They would have they were likely there to anoint the body. Of course, if you think about it, there's still guards supposedly in front of it, and a stone in front of it. So how do I think that they're going to be doing, anointing the body if they can't get in? So but it says, Mark says, after the Sabbath ended, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Jacob, and Salome came bearing spices because they wanted to anoint him. All right. And the next interesting thing here, of course, is who is there. It's Mary Magdalene. It is Mary, the mother of James. And here's where it gets a little dodgy, because of course the manuscripts don't have punctuation. So is she the other Mary, the mother of James and Salome? Which would be rare because they don't usually name daughters. I mean, daughters are named, of course, but they don't usually include them. She's the mother of James, but only if she were a separate individual would she be, and not just, frankly, a daughter, would she be named. Daughters don't get called out in a passage like this. Just sons, right? But there's no, since there is no, you don't know whether they're talking about a separate person who was there, Salome, or talking about that this Mary was the mother of James and Salome. Now, looking at the Greek, I am convinced, though, that it is that Salome is another person who was present at the tomb because of the grammar there. If you would expect if she were the mother of Salome, Salome would be Salomes, which is the genitive. So it's likely that there are
another Salome.
Yeah. So there are three people there, right? I'm sorry. And so they go there. Now, the fact that the gospel, we're starting at least with Mark, but it's in all the gospel, that there are women there in a society where women were at best a second thought. If you look, for example, at in the ancient Roman world, it's hard to find out what the actual names of any of these people were. So, for example, the daughter of Augustus was named Julia, but it's probably not her name. She was called Julia because that's the family name, and that would be because she's not otherwise considered to be of particular interest, except she gets exiled.
They all would be Julia.
They all would have been Julia, yes. And it could even be almost
daughter it would be.
Yeah, it could almost be like the major and minor, so 1, 2, prima, secunda, tertia. So anyway, they come to the tomb, and when they are there, and this is one of the most significant things to keep in mind, is the stone was rolled away. And they saw they see, of course, a young man sitting inside the tomb. And they said, Jesus is risen, he's not here, he's risen. Okay. Who is the young man? Well, in Mark, he's not really identified. It is he's likely, of course, to be an angel. But there is of course, he is a supernatural being and not otherwise identified. And so he says to them, of course, tell Peter. This is Mark, after all, so if it's Peter's recollection, of course he's going to identify Peter first. Tell Peter and his disciples. And so this brings up one of the questions that I had raised that you should think about. So if they're going to go and tell Peter and the disciples, where are they?
Where the
Where have they been?
Well,
Hiding.
they're probably in hiding, right? And we'll see in John that they are in a room with a locked door. So so at that point then the women flee, right? And it says that they are they fled from the tomb, and they said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. That is the end of Mark. Except there are two other sections that were probably added later. There's a longer ending of Mark where Jesus then appears to Mary Magdalene, and not necessarily anybody else. And this then fills in, but it contradicts what we have before, because it says, well, she went and she told the disciples who didn't believe her. Why should they? She's a woman. But that is something entirely different than we see we've had previous, where they simply said they fled. And then of course, Jesus appears to two disciples who didn't believe him either. Didn't believe him at all. And finally, of course, he appears at dinner when he says to them, and it's interesting, all these translations seem to use the same word. They say he upbraided them, which is not a word that people often use. It was probably scolded them or said, "I'm very disappointed in you," and said to them, "Why didn't you believe me?" So the question then is why isn't there this longer section? Well, part of it, of course, is that you have a longer section in order to explain, to make it consistent with some of the other Gospels, where Jesus does meet them, and it's not just the flat ending there where they left and there's nothing else. Somehow or another, you've got to explain. That's why that section there, which is 9 all the way to 20, which covers the Great Commission and the Ascension, they want to fill in the details because it was unsatisfying simply to have them leave and never see Jesus again, right? So if he is truly has risen for the dead, all they have in the shorter version of Mark is, well, you know, it's this guy told us this. And if they did, and even if they did go back to the disciples and said, "Hey, we were there. This guy sitting in the tomb, and he says Jesus is risen," you can kind of understand why the disciples might have said, "Well, you got any more evidence than that?" And so this was in order to explain why. To add more evidence from other sources that he had indeed risen and had appeared to other people. Not only Mary Magdalene. Interesting, it's Mary Magdalene and not any other of the women. To Mary Magdalene and then to other disciples. Note again that these two other disciples are not they're not in hiding. So they're probably not the inner circle. Mm-hmm. They're probably not one of the 11. Because the 11 are, have feared for their lives, and they're in this locked room. Now there is a section here called the shorter ending of Mark that is in my Greek Bible. It has no verse numbers. And so I can't find it in the translation either. It is it's a bit that seems to be something that was essentially stuck in there, and it talks about Jesus. Talking to his disciples, and then saying to them that that what I've told you will last forever and ever. Amen. So that is the version from Mark.
I have a quick question on that.
Of course.
On the two disciples. Is that understood to be the two disciples on the road to Emmaus?
It could well be, because there are two disciples that are mentioned in the other Gospels. Yes, so they're probably the same people. Yes, but again, not part of the core group.
Right, yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be on the road to begin with. So, if we go to Matthew, which is Matthew 28. Well, let me stop there. Any other questions before we go on to Matthew?
I imagine that the justification would be because conceptually risen from the dead, conceptually that would be alien
Yes,
to any normal.
because the rising from the dead would happen, and was not inconsistent in Jewish teaching, but not till the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, and as far as they were concerned, the world looked the same.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the apostles had seen several rise, the young girl and
Lazarus.
and Lazarus, and so it wasn't completely out of their mind.
I gotta say, we have that account with Mary when Jesus, tell her, do you believe in that I'm the resurrection?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, yes, I know that my brother will rise at the end.
So it was known.
Yes, but again, that's also that is true. I mean, it was but when she says, I believe that my brother will rise, it's at the end of the world. It's not
Right,
right then.
exactly, right. And
So she is, she's expecting that, yes, indeed, he will come to life, but not now.
But you would have thought that the apostles would have been more susceptible to that because they were there when Lazarus got called out of the tomb. So you would have thought that they would say, oh yeah, he's risen just like Lazarus.
Yes, that is true.
But not as a spirit.
No, but when Mary said, I saw him,
Yes,
and he is risen, I mean, he's alive
he's alive.
out of the tomb, you would have thought that they would have said, oh, I wonder if that's like Lazarus, you know, and not been so dismissive of her, although she might have been, because she had been involved with so many demons, they might have thought she had lost her mind.
Well, it wasn't long after Christ had ascended that the group were talking about how soon will it be before Christ comes again. And there was always that controversy about when it's going to happen, even today.
When will you restore the kingdom of Israel,
Yes.
as it says in chapter 1 of Acts? And he says, that's not for you to know. So,
But we should know the signs of the times. And
well,
the-
no, but
and the
that's also in Mark, but there will be signs, but as for the day and the hour, only the Father knows.
only the Father
Not
knows.
even, I don't even know.
No.
And if anybody
But you're
should
not
know, I
Christ.
should know.
But you're not Christ.
No, what I meant was not me
I know.
personally, I meant Jesus is saying he doesn't even know.
Yep.
Not, the Father doesn't know, I mean, the Son doesn't know, only the Father. So when you get to Matthew chapter 28, there are some interesting details and there are some interesting omissions. So when the women go to the tomb, it says again after the Sabbath, when it was the first hour of the Sabbath. In other words, they reckoned the time from this, essentially around the rising of the sun. But that's 6 in the morning is when the day starts for the working day starts. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, no longer identified as whose mother she is, went and saw the tomb. And suddenly, there was a great earthquake, it says, and it says, what every translation says is an angel of the Lord appeared from heaven, or came down, katabas, came down from heaven. And what's interesting for that is always been not a point of contention, but it's been an issue that I feel has never been satisfactorily resolved. So the phrase angelos, the word angelos in Greek means simply messenger. It does not mean angel by itself until much later. And
doesn't mean heavenly messenger. It doesn't mean
nothing like
messenger.
that. But the fact that it is an angelos kuriou, in other words, a messenger from the Lord, would indicate it was a spiritual or some sort of heavenly creature. So the question I ask of you is, if it's a messenger from the Lord, what else could it be except an angel? So to say an angel of the Lord is kind of redundant, And the true phrase should be messenger of the Lord. Because if angelos meant angel, then all you have to do is say angelos. You don't have to say from the Lord. But the fact that they add from the Lord means that still in that time, people might have thought that it was that there was just a regular, every ordinary kind of messenger, a human messenger. So, by the way, if you look earlier in Matthew, same phrase. When an angel appears to Joseph in a dream, it's an angel it is a messenger from the Lord. So, but nobody seems to have in my opinion, they should translate either as simply angel or messenger from the Lord.
But do you think it's to do emphasis? To give emphasis to it because it's so significant?
Then I'm talking about the English translation. Maybe they want to make the emphasis. What the Greek is not going to do, they wouldn't say, because the word would have to mean angel already, and not just messenger. If you were looking to emphasize it.
Do they believe in evil angels?
Well, there's the next one. I mean, the devil is a fallen angel.
Right.
But that's the only reference that I can think of that might be an evil angel, and that doesn't appear until Revelation, which is written much later than the Gospels. So.
Well, if this would be a history, and it's an angel of the Lord, again, if they translated it messenger, they're conveying to people that wouldn't have knowledge of this, so wouldn't it help them understand what kind of messenger
Well, in Matthew.
in the gospel?
Well, in Matthew, of course, is directed toward a Jewish audience, and they knew about angels
Oh, okay.
because there's Jacob wrestling with the angel.
Yes. But in Jacob wrestling with the angel, is the Greek translation, is it
Well, it's
messenger
Hebrew.
or is it?
That's a
or
good
is it
question because it's
angel?
in Hebrew.
Oh, okay. I was wondering if there was
And it's a good question because I'll have to take a look at that in the Greek translation, in the Septuagint to see what that says. So it's worth looking into. So the next thing that's interesting there, well, first of all, there were guards still outside the tomb, and it is if you look at Mark says the stone was already rolled away. In Matthew, it says, well, there's an earthquake, and the angel then, the earthquake and the angel rolled the stone away, and that's when the angel says, hey, you need to go and talk to the disciples. Now you have two women who then run into Jesus, and Jesus is talking to them. Whereas in Mark, in the longer version, it is just Mary Magdalene. So at the same time, then there's the story about the guards, and So, in fact, it says actually some of the guards, not all of the guards, but some of the guards then came into the city and made this report to the high priests about what had just happened. Now, the fact that they go to the high priest and not to Pilate indicates that these were probably temple guards. They weren't Roman soldiers. And that they would have, because if they were actually Roman soldiers, they would have gone to their boss, and that would have been Pilate. And in fact, Matthew had said previously that it was the high priest and the elders who said, we're going to set a guard. And Pilate says, okay. And not that he doesn't say, I'll send some Roman soldiers to do it. You know, you don't have to do anything. They set the guard. And that again is why if they had, you know, the fact that they ran away and went to the city meant that they were, and those of us in the military know that that's dereliction of duty. Which in those days carried very serious offense. It was a very serious offense, right? It was capital offense. And so so that's why the elders and the people concerning around the high priest are saying, look, we're going to we'll cover for you. And so we will, and they said, and we're going to give you a bunch of money. And the phrase that is used in Matthew is, it doesn't say how much money or what kind of money. It just said sufficient amount to shut them up. And we'll let it go out that they came and his disciples came and rolled away the tomb. Rolled away the stone from the tomb, and then they and stole the body. And that this is, says Matthew, this is the story that is reported to this day. So Matthew's inclusion of that is an indication that that story was still being told by the time he's writing this gospel. And it's his answer to the story, and to say, this is why this is where the story came from. And indeed, given the fact that Matthew probably was still had decent contacts in the community, he might well have talked to one of the guards, or even one of the members of the Sanhedrin, because if we go back to chapter 2 of Matthew, when he talks about the Magi coming to the Sanhedrin and to Herod, the first question that arises, how would Matthew know? And to me, it's because he had somebody on the inside. And there's no reason to think that his contacts would not have kept up his contacts throughout throughout that period. And when he's putting this together, So, again, if you are looking at the time period that, I mean, the guards would have been reasonably young men, because you don't have old men guarding tombs. You don't have old men as soldiers anymore. You know, certainly not the sort of people who would be assigned to guard a tomb. Those are your privates first class and your lance corporals and those sorts of people. And so they would be fairly young. And so by the time Matthew's writing his gospel, which I believe started, he started writing it probably as soon as as soon as the Christian church starts to come together in the 40s, and I think that he could well have been able to talk to to men who at that point might have been 30 years old. And the ones who were younger members of the Sanhedrin back in days around Herod, they would have been elderly that time, but that would have been extremely significant, and they would have remembered it. The thing you have to remember, and we're always taught that, and I've mentioned this before, but I want to raise it again. We're taught that the average age, the average lifespan in the ancient world was quite short, if that was quite short. But that's because of the high number of stillbirths and children who died in infancy, and people who died of childhood diseases before they were 10 or 11 years old. And all that gets factored. If you made it past that, and and again, in a period of time where they didn't have decent medicine, a lot of people died in infancy or when they were young children. That brings it all, the date down quite a lot. Once you made it past that, particularly if you were well off, you were probably going to live, 50s, 60, whatever.
If you made it past 33.
No, yeah, right. Well, there is that, but certainly if you made it past 10 or 12,
If you look at the pictures of the founding fathers of the country, there's a bit of gray hair there. So they were mature people too.
Yes, right.
Even up till 1776.
Bruce, do we
Yes.
we know like Jesus was around 30.
Yes.
Do we know how old the apostles were? Were they much younger than
I
him?
think they were largely younger, because many of them were then after that spent the next 20 years or more out trying to build the church.
Right.
And some of them, like John, would have been quite young.
Mm-hmm.
Mark was probably very, very young, because he refers, although he's not referred to by name in the Garden of Gethsemane when they talk about the young man fleeing without his clothes.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably Mark, because why else mention him?
How old would Peter have been? I always think of him as an old man. 'Cause
Peter was probably young at the time of Jesus's ministry, but he dies at the time of Nero, and so you're looking at the 60s by that time. So assume he's 20 years old. Assume he's born in 10, right? by the time, by the time of Nero's reign, he's well into his 50s. But probably no older than that. Yes, Marty?
Just because we're not saying it, Mary, mother of whomever, is older, but often women die in childbirth,
Right.
and not in this time, so that men, if they get past 25, well, they're fine. Women, not so much. Okay, women would had an additional thing that killed them, and I simply point that out that it's troubling, not troubling, but I have difficulty with Mary Magdalene. How did she make it? You know, that sort of thing.
Of course, they don't mention that Mary Magdalene had any children or did anything.
No. I mean, some people think of her as a hooker, but there's very little evidence of that. And if so, then she wouldn't have died. She wouldn't have lived anyway. I simply point that out. That also, besides the things that have been mentioned so far, there was my childbirth.
Well, as you have mentioned on more than one occasion, you go and look at the medieval graves even later, and you see there's the guy and three wives, are all buried in the same place. So
Even our Civil War, doctors were looked down upon if they happened to wash their hands between one patient and another, let alone washing the utensils.
yes, right. So,
I had a question about the guard.
yes.
It doesn't say that, but the fact that they went away to the high priest, is it a slight possibility that they might believe that Jesus is the Son of God because of all the miraculous stuff that has happened? Or
They fainted.
so they wouldn't have had any recollection of it?
Right, they, when the earthquake occurred, they were
They fainted.
paralyzed or they fainted. I think
Right.
they passed out.
So then they wake up and they see a tomb with Jesus.
It's empty, right, and and there's this huge earthquake, and so what they probably reported was there was this big thunderclap. We saw this guy. There was we fainted and we ran.
And we don't know what
And we don't know what happened, and then the elders say, well, this is what happened.
Okay.
So so that is is Matthew, and Luke. Now again, when we look at Luke, and let me give you the chapter number. No, of course I didn't put it there, right?
24.
24, thank you so much.
Oh, that's really long by comparison.
Yes, well, Luke tended to, fancied himself a bit of a writer, which he was, but he's got to put all sorts of stuff in here.
Well, he was pretty specific about everything.
Yes, right, so, yeah, there are.
TMI.
There are some people who think there's entirely too much in there about the birth of Jesus. So, okay, and again, we still have Mary Magdalene. She is the one constant so far. The fact that she is mentioned consistently would again indicate that she was would offer more additional evidence to the fact that this particular scene actually happened.
Wait, I have a question.
Yes.
So you're looking at the Greek, but here, where do you see her in the translation?
Sorry, let me go back to the.
Oh,
Right
it's
there,
10,
yeah.
it's 10.
Yeah,
Okay,
it takes a
sorry.
while before you get to it.
Yeah,
But it's there, yes.
and who's Joanna?
She's a new one.
It says Mary, mother of James, so you got two Jameses plus a father James, and you also some people think Jesus had a brother James.
That's correct.
Do we know which one?
This is probably James the Lesser, one of the apostles. So now there are two men instead of just one, angels. And the stone is rolled away. Now this brings up another interesting issue, which a friend of mine and I discussed for quite some time. Why was it necessary for the stone to be rolled away? Jesus didn't need to, didn't need to have the door opened for him to go out. When he goes and passes through the door to see the disciples, the door is locked, and suddenly he appears. He doesn't knock on the door and say, "Open up." So why is it that
They
that
had
the
to see
stone?
the linen.
Probably it's for them and not for him.
Right.
Although there is a point, if you look in Acts, there's a thing where Peter goes through a locked door.
But the stone is still there, how they know that he's not in the tomb?
Well, so that's why they had to open it up, why it
Yeah.
had to be open, so they could see that the tomb was empty. Yeah.
Proof.
Yes,
Seeing is believing.
yes. So
And the whole scheme was that Christ knew that he was going to have the apostles spread the word across the known world. So it had to be an important thing where many, many people saw that he had risen.
yes, and
And he appeared to 500 or so in the total.
Yeah, later on.
yes, right, and it's and again, I think that a lot of that may be, maybe details that were added perhaps from other sources. But if he appeared to 500 people, here's my question: if he appeared to 500 people at some point, why isn't that mentioned in Mark? Why isn't that mentioned in Matthew? It's you would think that they would want that story would certainly have been around. So I'm wondering whether or not it's a detail that was added later. Sometimes it's just hard to say. What was.
It fits very nicely. Whether
It fits.
one way-
It fits nicely, but there's still the inconsistencies.
So when you say it was added later, are you saying
later-
that it
sorry.
didn't happen?
No, I'm saying that somebody did, one of the gospel
Found a different
writers
resource and put
may
it
have had
in
either another source, or he said that logically this must have happened because look at how quickly the word spread.
Okay.
But people knew that Christ was an unusual person, and so there was a lot of discussion after Christ had died, after the resurrection and the ascension, in the forming of the church. The church fathers, the ones that knew the apostles. It's the second generation and the third generation. It wasn't until after about the third generation that the Gnostics started coming in full swing and changing things.
Yes, well, at least the third generation,
Mhm.
if not even later. Yes, but there are, but I think that I think there was probably somebody, again, if not one of the gospel writers, somebody who said, this is, we were able to catch on so quickly that it might not have been 13 guys, or I'm sorry, 11 guys who started this thing, and that we are that there were that more people were involved simply because you couldn't have done it any other way.
Right.
So that's I think one of the reasons why that might have been included. And again, it's you know, there is you know, as we like to say in the church, there is there's scripture, there's tradition, and logic, and sometimes scripture comes from logic.
I have a question.
Yes.
This whole thing with Mary here, now, we know that the mother of Jesus was at the crucifixion.
Right.
Because he says, woman, this is your, or John, this is your
Yes,
mother,
yes.
blah, blah,
Right.
blah. So, who is this Mary, mother of James? She couldn't have remarried, she would have been about 45 when he, at the crucifixion. So she was not remarried and had more children
She did
by
have
this time.
no, but well, first of all, it's a third Mary.
Okay,
This is the this is the mother of James the Lesser, not James the brother of Jesus.
okay.
So that is why where the tradition that or the logic that if you remember, it says that the scripture says Mary gave birth to Jesus, her firstborn, which implies that she had others later, and the ones later came about that they were born and they were very young when Joseph dies. And so that's why Jesus doesn't start his ministry until he's 30. I mean, why should he have started it when he was 18? Particularly given how brilliant he was. It's because he's supporting the family. And when they get old enough, then James and the other ones are able to take over the business. Because if he's not if he's not able to work and support his mother has got nothing.
Well, then why does he say it to John, here's your mother, at the resurrection, at the crucifixion, when she already has other children to take care of her?
Well, and that is an interesting question. It is the scriptures are very clear that she must have had other children, and it.
Well, it also says that the brothers of, I don't know who says it, but the brothers of Jesus didn't believe him. So, when he was having his ministry, the brothers were alive.
And
But they're small children.
well, if you look at Acts, though, at the Council of Jerusalem, where they made the decision to that the mission should be expanded to the Gentiles, the person who cast the deciding vote was James, the brother of Jesus.
Yeah.
So that is an inconsistency that, and I hate to think that John was trying to make make a greater role for himself, but I mean those all those stories that you point out, so that those are really difficult to reconcile.
I guess it's kind of disturbing that not disturbing, but kind of confusing why they'd throw another Mary in rather than, you would think his mother
But they
would go.
didn't throw it in.
Well,
It
his
happened.
mother would, his
They
mother
didn't
is.
just throw
is
him into
probably-
Mary, Mary was there, so, you know,
But
whether
I
it's
meant-
confusing or not.
Well, they identify her as being a particular Mary. Mary, the mother of James and Salome, or Mary, the mother of James. Right.
Throwing it in was probably the
That
wrong
was the
phrase,
wrong
but
phrase,
it's the idea
yeah.
that she's just dropped in with no explanation.
And no
Yeah.
before.
Right, so
after.
it's kind of throwing her in,
Yes,
and,
I
you
see
know,
what you mean.
But of course, maybe she was there.
well, I'm not
This
saying
Mary.
she wasn't, I'm just saying it would have been nice to kind of identify who she was.
Well, she is identified. She's identified as the mother of James and Salome. Right. Again, you're
Wasn't
looking.
Salome the mother of
Which would
James
not be the same as the
and,
mother of James and John.
and John?
Yes, so that's, I'm sorry, not the mother of Salome, the mother of James and, comma, and Salome.
Salome.
Right, so she's the mother, and so this is all of these details is what makes this whole thing, search into this fascinating, because you have to try to iron out the inconsistencies. But again, it may well have been when you're dealing with a small community, and particularly if this particular Mary was started to take a larger role in the church, everybody would know which one they were talking about when they say she was the mother of James and Solomon. And particularly if we're talking about James the Lesser, who was known to be one of the apostles, then, oh yeah, she's the mother of the apostle James. And so that is, we look at our society when there are lots and lots of people who move around a lot and don't live in tight communities. There, everybody knew everybody, because they were, they all lived in the same, and people might not have accepted to go to Jerusalem for the Passover. They might not have traveled very far.
And I think that's one reason maybe they always said, you know, from the house of, like, because there were so many Jameses and so many Jesuses and so many Marys and so many, they had a small thing of names that they picked, you know. So you would have to know your lineage.
Yeah, the other
Which is
interesting,
true, because they make that point, in the beginning of Matthew is where they go, it's a list.
right,
Yeah.
genealogy, right,
Yeah.
to connect Jesus to Abraham. But now the other interesting thing that I read was there's a city-country tension here between Galilee and Jerusalem. And the people like Peter came from Galilee, and many of the disciples, the apostles, probably were from Galilee, and were considered to be ignorant country folk. And the references to their seeing Jesus, you know, the resurrection, whereas the city folk from Jerusalem didn't, is a point I think that the gospel writers were trying to make. And so here again, this is where where the reference is to the road to Emmaus, where it's specifically mentioned that that's where they saw the two the two disciples, again, not from the inner circle. And because the 11 were still in hiding. And here's where, of course, they tell Jesus when it's a fuller story. Again, it's not just that they met him and they didn't believe. It was, let me tell you about everything that's happened. You haven't heard? You know, this is what went on. So that is, the emphasis there, again, is that let's fill in some more details, because Luke, may have talked to these guys, and then also make then they have the dinner, and Jesus comes in through the door, and they recognize him, but not, in fact, until they start eating. They just invite him to dinner, and they go, "Oh, I don't know who this guy is, how he got here, but sit down." And part of the hospitality of that part of the world, to this day, one might add, that part of the world where if even your greatest enemy comes into your house, you are obliged to feed him. And so it was, and then of course, after they break the bread and they're having dinner, then they recognize Jesus. So finally, there is John 20. If you look at John 20, once again, the one person who is listed throughout is Mary Magdalene, and it is said on the first day of the week, it says in the translation, and so here is the first time that Peter actually comes to the tomb, along with another disciple. Any guesses who that is? Yeah, we know it's John, right? And, again, who manages to insert himself into the important scenes. Jesus, they see the linen clothes, and they see and they look into the tomb. What does this mean? Obviously, by this time, the stone is rolled away. John spends some time talking about Jesus appearing to the disciples, and again, these would have been the apostles, and John specifically mentions they were in a place that where the door was locked for fear of the Jews. And it was one of the things about John. There's a lot of controversy, a lot of discussion about John and what he meant by the Jews. And it has been justified all sorts of terrible things that John talks about, that in history, using this as a justification. But I, in fact, wrote about a paper about this question, and John specifically says hoi eudoi, and he uses the article, and often in the article, it's called anarthus. The article is omitted, Now, if you go back a few hundred years, but also I think you see it in the New Testament, the use of the article is the same as the use of the demonstrative pronoun. In other words, this or these. So what I think John is referring to is these Jews, not all of them, not as a group. So when you start to think about it, when he says, for fear of this group of Jews, and not everybody as a whole, I mean, again, many of the Jews were people who were, if not followers, were sympathetic to Jesus. Thought of him as a great prophet.
I have a question. So, when John is written, because they were considered Jews themselves for a long time, in which decade do they get siphoned off as?
Well, this is they get siphoned off as early as the 50s.
Is that when they're thrown out of the synagogue?
When they, right in Acts, when they mentioned, they get mentioned being thrown out of the synagogue, and that Paul specifically, or I'm sorry, not in Paul, in Hebrews, they talk about what it looks likely that they were like competing groups. Mm-hmm. So by the time that Hebrews is written, and the letter to the Romans, you're looking at about 50 AD or in the 50s.
So your explanation makes sense because they were still Jews themselves.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And
when they went to Turkey, they went to the synagogue because they knew the story and they knew the prophecies, and they were saying, well, Jesus fit the bill on the prophecies.
So that is what that was sort of the competing versions of the Gospels. Yes.
What I found interesting though is in John when he says, and he saw the linen cloths lying there, and the handkerchief that had been around his head, not lying with the linen clothes, but folded together in the place by itself. In the Jewish household, when you were sitting at dinner, and you were going to get up and leave, but come back, you would take your napkin and just lay it open like that. But if you were getting up and you weren't coming back, you folded the napkin. So, was he saying, was Jesus?
I'm not coming back.
Coming back.
That's entirely
I'm gone and I'm not coming back.
And is that while he's still in the tomb?
When Peter's in,
Okay. Well, that would make sense because he didn't go back to the tomb, did he?
No, he does not. He's gone.
Good point.
So Jesus was saying,
I'm out of here.
I'm out.
I'm out of here.
David,
Don't look for me anywhere else.
David, you had a question.
I've always wondered when Jesus appeared to the disciples in the room.
Where we
John. So John 20. John 20, verse 22.
Okay.
And it says, receive the Holy Spirit. So why is Jesus giving them the Holy Spirit here when we get the reception of the Holy Spirit in Acts? So why is there two reception of the Holy Spirit?
Well, it is probably a foretaste.
Okay.
A foretaste to let them know what is going to happen.
Okay.
So
Maybe
again,
not the full Holy Spirit, but they've gotten part of it, or
yeah, it's
they're
right.
completed in that.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. You can. Anyway, so are there any other questions?
The mind can only absorb as much as the seat can stand.
So, is it still running, or you got?
Oh, yeah, well,
Anyway, let's talk about next week. I thought that this would be a good time to start to venture into Acts. So let's look at Acts chapter 1. And I'll put together some questions for next week at the same time.
same place.
We're still home.
Right on, thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I guess I should collect these.
Come on.